right. Well, again, I just want to welcome everybody. And I'm going to turn it over to Marty, who's going to talk about data collection and some other pieces this morning. And we hopefully won't keep you too long this morning. So, Marty.
All right. Good morning, everyone. I'm using a new microphone, so let me know if I need to adjust things or if I'm not loud enough or too loud or something like that. Let's start off with the objectives here. We're gonna go look at some of the performance measures, the results, year one pilot results, just briefly to kind of get us all on the same page of where we were at after the end of the first year. Then we're going to talk about the new activities for year two and understanding the data collection forms and requirements, which is the real big piece. So we're going to go through those because there's some updates and changes based on the objectives that are coming in for year two. And then finally at the end, we're going to discuss a new SIG proposal, just kind of as an initial kind of floating of the ideas around that, and things are going to, and then talking a little bit about states that might want to participate. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that later. Let's go ahead and get started with talking about the objectives. So up here you can see we've got 4 objectives or 4 performance measures under objective 1, which has to do with the achievement and learning plans for OSY. We measured 1.1 in year 1. The performance measure was 75% of OSY participating in project-directed instructional services will demonstrate a 20% average gain between pre and post. And we had 84% making a 20% gain. And then some other statistics on how many students were served and things like this. 1.2 and 1.3 are both performance measures that we're going to be evaluating at the end of this year 2. And year 2 is much of this instruction is happening in the summer, this coming summer. So or for some states has been happening throughout the regular school year. 1.2 says 75% of OSY with a learning plan will attain an average of 50% of the learning and achievement objectives. And the learning plans were, the updated learning plans were debuted at the TST meeting, and the TST representatives have received training on those. Similar thing with 1.3. So consortium-wide, we need 54 OSY to attend goal-setting workshops, whatever that looks like in your state, and attaining an acceptable or above rating score on the GSW rubric. So those two are the, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, Marty, we have just posted the goal setting implementation guide and the OSY learning plan on the website, and I will send that link out to you today. Okay,
great. So those are all up and ready to go and ready to be used. And we're going to talk about how we're going to be collecting the data and the results from those. And we are looking for all states to participate to some extent in the learning plan and GSW rubrics. And we understand that some states are going to have fewer, some states are going to have more, but we want all states to participate to some extent in these 2 objectives. And then 1.4 is just that's a consortium objective regarding completion of activities. So objective 2 has to do with the professional development. 2.1, 75% of staff completing professional development will increase their skills by 10% between a pre and post assessment. We use the staff training survey to get the results from that. And as you are doing professional development, those surveys are coming in, and we'll look at that survey in a bit. 2.2, 75% of states will average 5 PD or mentoring collaborations And those collaborations are recorded on the Director Coordinator Survey, and we had everybody last year completing at least those 5 collaborations. Most states had many more. 2.3, 75% of recruiters tested achieve a proficient on an OSY IDNR skills assessment. That is a year 2 objective. So last year we collected this information just to see where we were at, and I'll show you the results of that pilot data collection here in just a minute. But this year we're looking for all states to report the percent of recruiters who achieved a proficient rating on your IDNR skills assessment. And states can use their own IDNR skills assessment or one that was created by IRRC in collaboration with the work group from GOSOSY.
And one thing about the assessment, if you are interested, if you are not in the IRRC consortium and are interested in using a paper version, you can access that. I know Alabama wanted to use a paper version this summer. So just email Michael May and request that, and he'll provide it to you.
And 2.4 is again another consortium objective regarding completion of activities. Objective 3, most of this is going to be a year 3. We are going to be talking at the SST meeting in October about the products that are developed, adapted, vetted by all 18 states. So we want each state to use at least 5 products from the consortium by year 3. And those are going to include things like the mental health lessons, the professional development pieces that are online. So any of the new products that GOSOSY has put together for year 3 will, or for over the 3 years, will be included in a list of those possible products. 3.2, we're going to have a dissemination event at the end of year 3, and that's a consortium objective, and 3.3 is completion of activities related to this one. So that one's the state processes objective. Are there any questions about any of the 3 objectives that we've gone through? So objective 1 was the achievement and learning plans. Objective 2, professional development. Objective 3, state processes. All right, hearing no questions, let's go ahead and we'll look briefly at some of the pilot results from year 1. So we collected some information regarding the recruiter skills. And overall, 135 recruiters were assessed. 124, or 92%, were found to be proficient. And so this next year, we're hoping to get results from all states. And because this was not required, not all states needed to submit this information. So if your state says NA, that just means that at that particular time there was, there may have been an assessment in place, but the results had not been collected, or just it didn't need to report for some reason. But in year 2, at the end of year 2, we would like to know the number of recruiters assessed and the number and percent proficient.
Marty, could I ask a question at this point?
Of course.
For the recruiter skills assessment, because it's likely that not all states are going to be using the IRRC instrument, in the reporting out to OME, will there be some sort of disclaimer, some sort of way that notifies them that not every state used the same instrument?
Yes. So on the director coordinator form, we ask which assessment was used, and we will indicate in the reporting out in the annual performance report the number of states that were using the IRC assessment, and then starring with states and saying which assessment was used if it was something different.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm. And it looks like Mary had a question asking if this is going to be available at the end. And yes, the session is being recorded. The PowerPoint will be online as well as the audio from the webinar. So the learning plan results, we were looking at rating the pieces of the learning plan. It was rated on a 5-point scale, and practitioners and state directors rated each of these things. And looking at practical and useful, the practicality and usefulness of the learning plans, the practitioner learning form, the OSY learning plan form, and the GOSOSY training were all pretty close. 3.5 and 3.6 out of 5. And then the effectiveness of the learning plan, it was effective for choosing appropriate lessons and materials, had the highest rating at 3.8, and documenting OSI progress on lessons and materials in the 3.6. There were also a lot of narrative comments on these evaluation forms, and those were reviewed by the TST and used in updating for year 2, the learning plans. Right. So those were some of the results from year 1. So going on to some of the new activities for year 2. So these are activities that are coming online for after the new products have been developed. 1.2a, we're going to update the learning plan template, which has been finished. 1.2b, this is coming up, working with OSY to complete the learning plans. So that's a state activity. 1.2c, providing instruction to OSY using GOSOSY materials aligned with the learning plans. 1.3c, training our goal-setting workshop or GSW facilitators, and then conducting those GSWs and evaluating progress. So, as far as the goal-setting workshops go, conducting those really depends on your state context, and this is explained in the goal-setting workshop manual. You do what is going to work best for the needs of the students, and if that includes getting several students together and doing a workshop with several OSY, that's great. If it works better to do that one-on-one in a home-based or camp-based environment, that works as well. So those are new activities under Objective 1. New activities for Objective 2, the PD objective. So 2.2D is training staff on increasing OSY mental health literacy. The consortium has done quite a bit on this, including recently at the NASME conference in Orlando, a session on the newly developed mental health lessons. 2.3b, collaborate and conduct OSY in the field recruiter training in collaboration with IRRC. And so the collaboration piece of that has been done through the GOSOSY work group, and then states are conducting their own training, either using the IRRC materials if they are appropriate, or most states have their own materials. There's also tip sheets that GOSOSY has developed for specifically doing the recruitment of OSY. 2.3c, administer OSY recruiter skills competency tools and analyze summarized results in collaboration with IRC. So the collaboration piece again has been done. We will be collecting results of recruiter skills competency using the director coordinator form, which we're going to go over here in a minute. New for Objective 3, this is the one where it's state processes and the GOSOSY dissemination event. So 3.1b, we're in the process of updating the literature review and promising practices, and that will be done by the end of year 2. 3.1c, adapt and use online curricula and resource materials. And this includes going to the website and using the materials that are there, and then also some of the other examples that are listed. 3.1f, design, adapt, pilot, and vet web accessible lessons. Integrating platforms for sharing OSY learning resources. So that is, the team has worked really hard on creating some materials that you can download for finding the most appropriate lessons, and then also knowing what they contain. 3.2c, prepare content for the GOSOSY dissemination event at the SST meeting. So most of these are the consortium level activities, and not necessarily things that individual states need to worry about. But going back and thinking just a little bit about the new activities, are there any questions? So year 1, we're looking at mostly, or year 2 in objective 1, looking mostly at implementing the learning plans and the goal setting workshops. 2.2, or objective 2, doing the recruiter training as well as the mental health lessons. And then year 3, are some consortium level activities. And again, if you have any questions, you can either enter them into the text box or just stop me as we go through. That's fine too. All right, so let's get into the actual form and how we're going to collect that data. So I am going to bring up the form on my computer screen here. All right. Tracie, can you see that all right? I'm assuming we can see it.
Sorry,
if you
it took me a minute. I muted myself. Yes, I can see it.
Oh, okay, good. All right, so this is very similar to the one that was completed last year, and with a few additions because of the new performance measures that are coming in line. So you list your state, and then the coordinators are completing this form in consultation with the state director. Sometimes that's the same person, sometimes not. And for anything that says year 1 and year 2, we want both year 1 and year 2 information. And the places where we have year 1 is usually when it has to do with things like the number of OSY identified and served, dropout rates and graduation rates, because typically that information is not available by the due date for the form for the previous year. So the 16-17 data may not be available by September 20th. And that's okay, we understand that. And ONE understands that your consolidated state performance reports are not due until February after the annual performance report is due. So if you cannot complete 16-17 by September 20th when this form is due, that's okay. Go ahead and submit it without that data in there. If the data comes in before the APR is due, go ahead and send us an updated report with the new information in it. And as long as there's enough time to include that in there, we will do that. And so if you're coming in near the end of December, there may not be enough time to update the entire report, but As long as you're coming in with enough time for us to update it, we will do that with any updated information. If you aren't able to get us updated information, that's okay too. We will include it in the next performance report. So to recap, go ahead and fill out 15-16. If you have it, fill in the 16-17. And if not, we understand. Okay, so 1 and 2, dropout and graduation rates for just migrant students. Number 2, total number of migrant out-of-school youth identified and served. Questions on those 2 pieces? Okay, moving on to number 3. Number 3 is the number of OSY using the GOSOSY instructional materials. And this number should be the same as or higher than the number who are pre and post-tested below. So, and this is just the number who are using lessons. Now, and they may not, and you may have had OSY who are using lessons, but either because the lesson did not include a pre and post assessment, or you were not able to get a pre and post assessment for every student, this number may be higher than the number who actually had a pre or post test. So number 4 then is the number of migrant OSY who are improving their skills on the GOSOSY content-based assessment. And there is a student assessment score sheet that is used to complete this item. And what the coordinators need to put in is the number of OSY who had a pre and post test, a score for both, but do not include students who scored 100% on the pretest. And the reason for this is that if they've scored 100% on the pretest, there is no opportunity for growth. So in the number of OSY who had both the pretest and the post-test, we want everyone who has both scores and did not get 100% on the pretest. And then in the next column, we want the number of OSY who gained 20% or more. So in looking at those scores, how many got at least one more right, because there's only 5 questions. A gain of 20% would be getting 1 more right. So if they had a score of 1 better on the post-test, then we would count them in that second column. Any questions about this one? Okay, and that one's the same as in previous years. And looking at 5 and 6, we are looking at activities. The first one is OSY activities that went beyond the use of instructional materials. So if you look up in number 3, we asked how many OSY are using GOSOSY lessons. And there may have been activities that you are doing using materials that for some reason that you wouldn't count up there in number 3, or it may have been something where you're using the materials, but you want to highlight an activity that went above and beyond just a tutoring session, for example. So here you're including all those activities, post-secondary awareness or career awareness, or other activities, goal-setting activities, those kinds of things. We're going to be asking more about goal-setting activities later. So include the date. If this is something that didn't include, that wasn't like a specific date where this was done, it was more of an ongoing activity, that's fine. You can just list ongoing in the date section, the title or description of the activity, what type of activity it was post-secondary awareness, career awareness, mentoring, if you're a part of the mentoring program, or some other activity, location, and number of participants. Number 6, the GOSOSY professional learning activities. So these are anything that you're doing with staff provided by or to directors, instructional staff, recruiters on topics related to programs and services for OSY in year 2. So again, the date, title, description, the type, and the location and number of participants. So if it's for instructors, go ahead and I mark that. We also want to know when you had IDNR trainings. So putting that in this table as well, and that will be important for number 7 coming up next. How many recruiters demonstrated proficiency on your state recruiter assessment? And it says again that you can use your own recruiter assessment or one created through the collaboration with GOSOSY and IRC. If there is no recruiter assessment in place, list in A, we're hoping that everyone is going to have some sort of recruiter assessment in place. So we want to know the number who were assessed, the number scoring proficient, and then the assessment title. There is no requirement for a number of recruiters that information table from every state, but that does not mean that everyone needs to provide an assessment for every recruiter in the state. That is not necessary. Okay. Number 8 is the collaborations. This is the same as last year. We added a couple of other potential collaborators because we had some write-ins that were similar across the states. And the goal is to have at least 5 collaborations. And number 8, the instructions describe what we mean by collaboration. Number 9, we're counting the number of OSY participating in the goal setting workshops and the number with an acceptable or above rating on the GSW rubric. And so on the rubric, if the student has a total of 8 or more points, that is considered acceptable. And so all we need to know for the goal setting workshop, and this is the number of OSY who participated in those lessons and the number who achieved an acceptable or above score. In the case that you are using some materials from the manual, but for some reason are not using the rubric with those lessons, do not include them in this. We want to know, basically we want to know how many participated in the lessons and then how many were received an acceptable or above rating on the rubric. So even if you're using the materials but not using the rubric, that doesn't give us the kind of information that we need. So in that first one, just the number who you at least have some score for on the rubric, and then the second column, the number who have an acceptable or above rating. Okay, any questions about that one, since that one's new? Okay. Going on to number 10 then, and this has to do with the learning plans. And we're reporting on this by student rather than in aggregate. And so because that may include, depending on the state, many students, you can choose to include a sampling of the students, or you can choose to include all of the students who you have scores for on the learning plan, or steps for on the learning plan. So either way is fine. That's up to the state to decide. But what we need to know for each student that you're reporting is the number of steps that they've identified on their learning plan needed to meet the goal, And the provider version of the learning plan has a spot for this information. So you need to know the number of steps needed to meet the goal, the number of steps completed toward the goal, and then whether or not half or more of the steps were completed. And for both numbers 9 and 10, Tracie has done a data collection form where your providers can summarize this information for you so that you don't have to go through the rubrics or the learning plans themselves. There is another form that you can put out there. And Tracie, is that on the website yet?
It is being posted this morning.
Okay. So that
and Marty,
data collection
I'll email these tools directly to the state steering team as well.
Okay, great. So everybody will have those through email, or if necessary, you can also get them from the website. Any questions on the personal learning plans piece? Okay. The final, there's just a final little spot to provide any additional comments or explanations. If for some reason you were not able to report information for one or more of these items, this is a good place just to explain the circumstances of that. Most of the time, you know, if there's a reason why one thing or another was not able to be done, as long as we've got information about why that happened and we can explain that to OME, that's helpful. If it's just blank and we don't know why, that's a little bit more difficult to explain. So if you have to leave something blank or something just isn't applicable to you, please include an explanation so that we can pass that information on to OME. All right. Any questions on this form, Director, the Director Coordinator form? All right. Then the next one we need to talk about just briefly is the training and technical assistance evaluation form. So this one is essentially the same as the previous year. It is a form that you would give after you're doing training related to OSY. And it's easiest if you just send in this form as soon as you're done with the training. So you have people fill it out at the end of the training and then either scan it in or mail it to us afterwards. That way, we'll just kind of keep a running total of all of the training and technical assistance that's been done. All right. So that one was brief. Is there any other questions on either of these forms that we've gone over? Hearing none, we wanted to, just to close this out, do a discussion of the next SIG that is going to be done in the request for proposals is going to be coming out early in 2018 and due, at least so far from what we've heard, sometime around March or April. And so most of the work on the proposals, if not also just submitting the proposals, will be done before the next annual directors meeting. And so we wanted to make sure that we're coordinating and talking to states about the next 3-year iteration of the proposals. And we're going to be having several discussions of this. A major one coming up in October at the state steering team meeting. One of the ideas that's been floated so far is to take what we've done so far with out-of-school youth and expanding some of the materials and instruction to include students who are in school but needing some of the life skills, mental health lessons, and other products that have been developed by GOSOSY. And then, so looking at that expansion piece for year 3, since we've done a lot to get OSY recruited, involved, served, developed some good products. Many states have said, you know, we actually are using a lot of these materials with our secondary youth, and we'd like to have credit for that, even though the students that we're using them with are not necessarily out of school youth. So with that in mind, are there any thoughts, discussions, points that anybody would like to bring up for the next 3-year iteration of the consortium incentive grant?
Any thoughts? Your wait time's really good, Marty.
Very, very good.
I've been a participant on several webinars. Say anything? I understand that that piece completely. So if you do have any comments or thoughts on a new SIG, email Tracie or myself or both, and let us know what you would like to see, what you'd like to see happening.
Marty, did you see Mary's comment?
I just saw that coming in. Focus on implementing it online. Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Thank you, Mary.
So that's yeah. Thank you. That's a good idea. Yeah, and I know that Plazas Comunitarias for Mexican students is something that works out, or is something that some states have used very successfully to help students complete high school from there. So that is another possibility as an activity for sure.
Did you see Ray's?
Non-traditional populations. So Ray, what do you mean by non-traditional populations?
There's an increase of other populations like Congolese, Burmese. So I think it'd be very difficult to address every single one, but maybe to have a process where people can learn how to, what should be the steps if it was a generic, you know, how would you address a non-traditional population? Maybe not a specific one, but what you should do, like how to look up information and things like that, you know, some support on that style. I think that there's many places that are having like more Congolese or Burmese or other that are coming in, so that might be of interest.
Okay, thank you.
Right.
I think just to add, I think that many of these places, they have many of the kids coming from these countries might have some degree of education back in their country. Many of them come as refugees, but maybe not at the same level. I don't know, they're going to be, they might be a little bit more advanced literally than the OSYs we had traditionally been working with, but at the same time might be a little bit different, you know. So I think it'd be interesting.
Yeah, and I've heard that from several states, that it can be a challenge when you've got a new population coming in that you haven't worked with before, and the figuring out the pieces around language and what resources are available around that, and around previous schooling, what students know and are able to do already, and then figuring out how to work culturally in that environment is also a challenge. So those are all good pieces. All right. And Margot, could we also explore ways to share learning plans across states? Was this mentioned at the TST meeting? So do you mean
yeah,
like as a student is completing one, that information is then transferred to a state that they travel to? I think that's, and I think Tracie, that you've done some work on that already.
No, we've just talked about it. We really love the idea. I know lots of people on the TST thought it's a they thought it was a fantastic idea, but how do we implement that, and how do we make it transportable? What sort of modality do we need to use? So I agree with Margot. I think it's a great idea, but it's not something that there's not an easy answer as to how to do it. So.
Yeah. So I mean, so that's a possibility then for next SIG, is looking at, how do we transfer those, which would apply to almost any student when it comes to what they've done in one state, and then how do we get that information to another?
Yeah,
in the hands of the correct people.
Right, and if I could just expand on that, not just the learning plan, but like you said, Marty, just whatever services, academic services, support services we've done with particular OSY, if we could somehow find better ways to transfer that information across states, particularly states that are within the consortium, because that's the one thing that we do hear sometimes from OSY, is that they'll go to a new state and it's back to, English 101, where they're ready to be a little bit more challenged, but we're not sure what level they're at because we don't have that information being transferred.
Right. Okay.
Mary had another comment too.
I'll focus on proficiency-based learning and graduation requirements as opposed to credit accrual. Right, and I've heard that from a lot of states too. That the credit accrual is more and more difficult as students are not staying as long, not as available for whatever reasons to do the credit accrual piece. And so a lot of states are looking for, okay, so if credit accrual isn't working with our secondary youth, what do we look at? And so that was that's kind of the idea too, is how do we take some of the lessons learned from working with OSY, and then also translate that into working with secondary youth.
And Marty, there was a point raised. If you can you go back to the director's report quickly?
Yeah.
And I want to look at if you look at number 10, we're not asking for you to report any student names at all. So if you need to give them a different number or however you need to report it, just make sure you realize that we're not asking for any identifiable information in regard to their personal learning plans.
Exactly. So on the form that Tracie has created for you to use locally, there is a place for student names, but for the overall evaluation, we do not need to know that. We just need to know for each student the number of steps needed to meet the goal and the number of steps completed. And the reason that we're looking at this is because we need to get an average per student of the number of steps needed, and then an average number completed. And that information we can use to then decide, if we're getting close, or if maybe there's, looking at the number of steps, so is the number of steps appropriate for the learning plans and the processes in the context and those kinds of things. It will help us to do better professional development if we have this information. All right. So I think that is pretty much what we had to cover today. Tracie, is there anything else that you would like to add?
No, I just want to thank everyone for their time and support. And we'll get the rest of the information out to everyone. So we appreciate it. And if you have questions,
thank you all
let us
for
know.
participating. Absolutely. Any additional questions, comments? Again, thank you all. And looking forward to continuing to work with you all.
Thanks, Marty.
Thanks, Marty.
Yep, you're welcome. Thank you.